So you want to know about internet on cargo ships in 2021? Now this is a controversial topic, but today we're going to be covering exactly this, because on this channel we're covering life at sea. And by life at sea, we're not only talking about the glamorous part of the shipping industry, we're also talking about some harsh realities. And the state of the internet facilities on board cargo ships in 2021 is something that's definitely going to surprise most of you. Let's do this. Okay, let's be honest, internet is essential for life nowadays in 2021. Even for people on land, it is the most important factor right now in 90% of our lives. You can stay in touch with people, you can game, you can watch shows, you can get information, you can do absolutely everything as long as you have a stable internet connection. Basically, an essential part of life right now for absolutely anyone in the world. But it's even more important for seafarers, and for the simple reason that it helps us stay connected to our family. And that's something that is so amazing and so important. For seafarers, the internet facilities that you have on board is pretty much equivalent to your social life. It's really sad to say that, but it's so true. The only way you can actually have a social life now at sea is by having a standard, valid, strong, stable internet connection, because that's the only way you can actually stay connected to the world and maintain some sort of normalcy. So what is the status of internet on mega cargo ships in 2021? Well, to be completely honest, we do have internet on board our ships. Like, I am privileged on board this ship where I have a fantastic internet connection for what it is. But we're not only talking about one ship here, we're talking about the industry. And with respect to the maritime industry in 2021, we do have internet in limited quantities. And when I say limited, I mean really limited. So what do I mean by limited internet on board cargo ships? Well, on this ship, I have 400 megabytes per day. That's my consumption, and that's what I get every day. We all have a login ID and password where we connect to a server, and we can use 400 megabytes per day. Now the speed is variable, and that is a part of the limitation, as well as 400 megabytes. If you're somebody who's living on land and you're watching this video, it is going to surprise you, especially back home in India where internet is super cheap. You're using 400 MB per day, where you don't get to see your families, you don't get to interact with people on a daily basis. You're stuck with the same people for 6 months, 9 months maybe. So yeah, that is a limitation. But limited internet is not necessarily a bad thing. Actually, it's great, it's okay, it's perfectly fine. And that's not the problem that we're looking at addressing today. The issue that we're looking at addressing today is the fact that on certain cargo ships in 2021, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say at least 50% of the maritime industry, we still do not have internet on board. And that is an issue. That's an issue that I wanna address today on this channel. So the truth is, back in the day, about like 50-60 years ago, you had ships which had a lot more crew on board. You had an average of about 40 to 50 people on every vessel. So even if you weren't a social person, you were always around people. It was like a little township in the water. And you also had longer port stay because operations would take longer because the infrastructure wasn't as good. You would also have a lot more shore leave, which basically means seafarers could get off ships, go ashore, connect with people, and bring back those connections with them when they came back on board while they were sailing, which helped them maintain some sort of normalcy when they were out at sea. Today, things are completely different, where with the pandemic, shore leaves are pretty much non-existent. On an average, any ship that you look at, even bulk carriers or general cargo ships, don't do more than 2 days in any particular port, and even their operations have become so quick and so hectic that seafarers really struggle to be able to go out. So basically what I'm trying to say is, today cargo ships are smaller, the infrastructure is better, the technology is advanced, the number of crew that we have on board vessels has come down to 18 to 23 on an average within the industry, which is half of what you used to have about 50 years ago. Basically means the workload is now distributed between these 18 to 23 people that you have on ships, and the work hasn't gotten any lesser. The paperwork has increased, the documentation has increased, safety requirements have become better. While all of this is great on a lot of fronts, it also means that considering you have lesser people on board ships and you have a lot more work and a lot more paperwork to do, seafarers also have a lot lesser time to sit down and actually socialize. If you're on a modern day cargo ship, the internet pretty much becomes your best friend, and that's only even possible if you have access to it. Now, this video is by no means me complaining about the internet facilities that we have on board my ship, because honestly I have 400 MB per day like I mentioned, which by land standards is not a lot, but by sea standards is fantastic. It's actually an industry-leading service at the moment. But this is more about what other seafarers go through all over the world within the maritime industry, and that is not a small amount of people. A lot of these seafarers who don't have great internet services on board may have certain other services where they have an emailing system where you send an email from your designated workplace like the bridge or the engine control room. The mail goes to the captain and the captain will forward your email to your loved ones. Now, this is not a very private service, and the only actual time these seafarers can actually have a private conversation with their families is when they get to port and they get a local SIM card, or even if you get an electronic SIM card, you're still dependent on being close to land, close to shore, so that you can actually have a private conversation with your wife, your girlfriend, your mother, your father, your best friend, your brother. Because there are people living like this in 2021 and it's not easy. It's actually really hard. Now, as far as I can understand, to be completely honest, there's nobody to blame for this. I think the main reason why a lot of these ships, or 50% of the maritime industry, still doesn't have great internet facilities on board is because of the shipping industry itself. Now, the truth about the shipping industry is it is extremely regulated. If you need something from the smallest nut to the smallest bolt, if it's required, it's there. To the largest engine component, if it's required and it costs $1 billion, it's there. But if it's not required, then there's absolutely no sign, there's absolutely no reason why it's going to be placed on board your vessel. And that's exactly why a lot of ships do not have internet in 2021, because it's not required. You sitting on land would probably look at me and go like, but dude, it's 2021. How can people actually say that internet isn't required? I mean, people are working from home at this point, and your entire job, your entire economy is running off of the internet, off of video calls, off of Zoom. Even though it's not required, there's a lot of flexibility for ship owners, there's a lot of flexibility for ship managers, there's a lot of flexibility within the maritime industry, which has led to 3 different situations within the maritime industry that we're going to talk about next. Situation number 1, it's not required and you don't have internet facilities on board. You're given some basic makeshift emailing service. It's not private. Situation number 2 is what I have, which is the most ideal situation, where we have free internet on board our ships and we have 400 megabytes per day, which is not a lot, but it's good enough. You can definitely have video calls, you can definitely make WhatsApp calls, you can stream a little bit of content on Instagram and YouTube, especially if you're using the light versions. It's great. It's definitely a boon and I absolutely love it. I'm really happy with what I have. And situation number 3 is where seafarers are made to pay for internet, and they're made to pay absurd amounts of money for internet. Don't get me wrong, paying for internet is perfectly fine, but you have to keep in mind, this is satellite internet. Satellite internet is not cheap. I've had to pay for internet in the past when I was working for a different company and different owners and stuff like that. And basically, I've actually had to pay $25 for 100 MB of internet usage. Put that into perspective, $25. $1 is 70 rupees. I have to pay $25 for 100 megabytes of internet. You can blow off 100 megabytes of internet in a day or in a couple of hours just sending a bunch of photographs on WhatsApp. And that's nothing. And that's exactly why I say this is the 3rd situation. And this is the worst situation of them all, where seafarers are given internet that's super expensive. Just because you have internet, the seafarer is going to want to use it and he's going to blow half of his salary on internet services. Keep in mind, there are very few companies that give you free internet. Very few. I'm pretty sure your next question is, why doesn't anyone who's really big in the maritime industry do something about this? Or why aren't there rules for it? Or why isn't it required? And well, technically, we do have a convention in the maritime industry that governs everyone who's out at sea, which is the Maritime Labor Convention, and they do have a requirement. Let me tell you what the requirement actually is. So as per the Maritime Labor Convention, it's required that seafarers are provided with adequate, ship-shore communications, telephone, email, and internet where available, and the charges have to be a reasonable amount. The first thought that comes into your mind is, what's a reasonable amount? And what do you mean by if available? These are the 2 biggest loopholes that pretty much govern how internet is provided to seafarers and how communication and recreation facilities are provided to seafarers today in 2021. These loopholes are pretty much used against providing seafarers with adequate amounts of internet. I want to shed light on this topic because I'm a seafarer and I'm working in a great company right now, but tomorrow I could be in a situation where I have to shift companies and I have absolutely nothing. I have no communication, and that's not the life that seafarers want in the near future as well. I also want to talk to you guys about why I think internet is really useful on board ships. I know a lot of people might disagree, and a lot of seniors within the maritime industry might also disagree, but there are reasons and benefits to having internet on board. Let's talk about that. First things first is the availability of information. You have more information available to you at all times. So when you're going to a port or you need to know about the latest regulations within the maritime industry, you can't always be waiting for a show-based email to come in with patches of network data or patches of information or PDF files when you can just get onto Google and access absolutely everything that you need. Information is key. Definitely having internet on board is going to give you access to a large amount of information, which is only going to help improve your safety. I think the next point is a little obvious, but you're going to have better entertainment and better recreation facilities on board. Platforms such as YouTube and Netflix actually grew massively in the last 2 years ever since the pandemic hit us, and that's because that became people's primary source of entertainment. The trajectory is that it's going to keep growing over the next few years because the world is going way more digital than it used to be. So it's basically going to improve your recreation facilities. It's also going to improve your life at sea, entertainment. I think the next point goes without saying, but better communication with your family and friends. That's the primary goal for every seafarer. Having internet is definitely better communication. It's essential almost right now at this point in time to be able to pick up the phone and call your loved ones, and you can do that with internet on board. Better financial management. And this is a little unconventional, but it's really true, and a lot of modern day seafarers are using internet facilities on board to manage their finances a lot better. Now, seafarers earn a ton of money, and money goes into their account directly from the shipping company. Now, while you're on board, the money is just going to accumulate in your account, and you can tell your loved ones, your wives, your parents to invest that money for you while you're on board, but it's going to be really hard for you to stay in the loop. Well, today you can invest absolutely all your cash online. You have applications for banks. You can check your investments. You can get updates on your investments. You can see what payments you have to make. So if you do have a stable internet connection, you can stay on top of your financial game. That's the primary aim. This is our job. It's our life. It's our livelihood. So financial management is something that's definitely available if you have internet facilities. Better vacation planning is another really great aspect of having internet on board. You're already planning your weekend every week. Every Tuesday or Wednesday, you start building plans with your friends on land, saying, okay, we're going to go out for drinks on Saturday night. This is basically your planning. This is how you plan your recreation. Similarly, seafarers get a couple of months on board a ship where they work each and every day, and then they go home and they get a couple of months completely off. Now, while they're going to spend a good amount of time just resting and recovering, they too need to plan their recreation. They too need to plan their vacation. They do need leaves, they do need to travel for leisure. And if you have good internet facilities on board, I know it's really important for me to be able to plan my vacations while I'm on board, because you have an idea of how you're going to spend your vacation, which will also keep you motivated to go home, complete your vacation, do what you want to do, and then get back on board. You actually have something to look forward to. Having internet on board really helps with overall well-being of seafarers and improving their mental health. Senior seafarers within the industry actually believe that if you have internet facilities on board, you're connected to your families. Sometimes you can have problems at home, and those problems will affect your job, therefore hampering your safety of life as well as the safety of the vessel. And that is true, but not always. Now, what you have to keep in mind is that when you do have a problem at home, and if you don't get to know about it, that doesn't mean that the problem is going to go away. The problem is still going to exist. If seafarers themselves can learn how to maintain a balance, be there for your family, at least emotionally, over the internet, you can talk to them, you can show some form of presence during a situation, during a problem, and you can put that aside when you're coming to keep your watches or do your job on board a vessel. That's going to be beneficial. And while the seniors in the industry are not wrong, lack of internet can also damage your mental health and safety, because like I said, if you can't communicate with your families, you don't know about the problems that you have at home, which is going to lead to a large amount of pent-up stress at their end. And when you do sign off from your vessel and you go home, the problem that they were actually dealing with is going to be the emotional turmoil where you couldn't be there. There's going to be that pent-up anxiety where they couldn't talk to you and they have so much to tell you. And your entire vacation is going to go in a state where you're going to feel really guilty about the fact that you couldn't be there for your family at a particular given point in time. And this does take a negative toll on a seafarer's mental health, and it also affects the health of the people back home in his family. So I know there are pros and cons to absolutely everything everywhere in the world. Too much of anything is really bad, and I completely understand that a balance needs to be maintained. While I can't be asking for free internet, while I understand that's a little too much, I do hope that majority of the maritime companies within the maritime industry today that do not provide internet can at least come up to a level where they start providing a basic internet facility, a minimal internet facility where at least seafarers can pay for internet and they can put a capping on the cost that the seafarers actually have to endure. Let's start off there, and I really hope that we can reach this point. And that's exactly what the whole point of this video was, to educate people about the state of the internet facilities. I would like to thank you guys for watching all the videos that I make based on life at sea on this channel. I would like to thank you guys for all your support. The channel has grown considerably in the last few months. A couple of videos are blowing up on YouTube right now. I'm really happy, and I would also like to acknowledge the fact that I am a privileged seafarer working in a company that provides the best internet services that they can. I'm really happy with what we have on board our vessels, but all I want is that other seafarers around the world can avail these fundamental rights as well, can avail these services as well, and I hope we can get that for absolutely every seafarer out there. Thank you for watching. Peace.